In the darkness of your screen, another nightmare awaits. Welcome to Void of Fears. We've conquered 10K, but the shadows grow hungry for more. Our journey to 100K subscribers has begun. Every like feeds the algorithm. Every comment summons new victims. Every subscription strengthens what we're building here. Join us. Shape our future. The Void has room for all. Now, let's dive into tonight's story. The day I first saw the stars dying began like any other. I remember the date clearly. April 17th, 2037. Another 16-hour shift monitoring the James Webb Space Telescope feeds. A lonely job that suited my disposition perfectly. People exhausted me. The cosmos never did. The JAST had been operational for 15 years by then, and while newer models had largely superseded it, there was value in maintaining the old workhorse. As it turned out, its positioning would save humanity precious months of warning. My name is Dr. Amina Voss. I specialized in stellar evolution at MIT before NASA recruited me for the Extended Deep Field Observation Program. My colleagues described me as brilliant but difficult. I preferred focused. After losing David on the failed Ares 7 Mars mission 4 years ago, I found solace in distance, both emotional and astronomical. The observation center was located in the New Mexico desert, isolated from light pollution and casual visitors. A sprawling complex of domes and low buildings, painted white to reflect the merciless sun. Inside, the temperature was kept at a constant 68 degrees. Cool enough to keep the equipment happy and the analysts alert. I customized my workspace with little that spoke of personality, a small cactus that required minimal attention, a coffee maker that had seen better days, and a single photograph of David and me at Olympus Mons base camp, taken 3 weeks before the accident. His smile still reached his eyes then. Mine did too. The night shift supervisor, Dr. Gregory Palmer, had just handed over the systems to me with his usual efficiency. Nothing extraordinary to report, he'd said, sliding his access card through the reader, though NGC 5471 is showing some interesting stellar activity in the blue range spectrum. Might be worth a closer look when you have time. I nodded, already scanning the overnight logs. Gregory lingered a moment longer than necessary. The department head's retirement party's this weekend, he ventured. It wouldn't kill you to make an appearance, Amina. I managed a tight smile. I'm scheduled for observation. You're always scheduled for observation. You wrote the schedule. His tone was gentle, concerned. It's been 4 years. I'm aware of the passage of time, Greg. Temporal measurement is rather essential in our field. He sighed, recognizing a lost cause. Have a good shift then. The door closed behind him with a soft pneumatic hiss, and I was alone again with the stars, just as I preferred. I settled into my routine, cycling through observation sectors, running diagnostics on the automated systems, and reviewing flagged anomalies. Most were easily explained: instrument aberrations, cosmic debris, or the occasional software glitch. The work demanded meticulous attention, but offered little excitement. That suited me fine. Excitement in astronomy usually meant catastrophe. When I reached NGC 5471, I remembered Gregory's comment and directed the computer to enhance the blue spectrum data. What initially appeared was unremarkable. A distant galaxy with the expected stellar distribution for its type. But as I began cross-referencing recent observations with the historical dataset, something caught my attention. I was studying routine data from galaxy NGC 5471 when I noticed it. A statistical anomaly in the stellar brightness measurements. 3 stars, all within the same sector, had dimmed by approximately 4% over 6 months. Initial analysis suggested standard stellar decay, but something about the pattern nagged at me. "Computer, overlay the dimming events chronologically," I instructed, sipping lukewarm coffee. The holographic display shifted, plotting each dimming incident across time. My coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering on the floor. The pattern wasn't random. The stars were dimming in a perfectly geometric progression, like points being systematically erased from the cosmos. I spent the next 6 hours verifying my findings, checking and rechecking the data against every known stellar phenomenon. Supernovas, neutron star formations, even theoretical dark matter interactions. Nothing matched the precise pattern I was seeing. By the time my shift ended, my hands were shaking from caffeine and adrenaline. "Computer, secure all data related to NGC 5471 anomalies under encryption protocol Voss Alpha 7. Authorization Voss Amina H 998 KD 4721. Data secured," the system confirmed. "Would you like to file an official observation report?" I hesitated. Official channels meant bureaucracy, committees, endless reviews. "No, direct communication only. Connect me to Director Harlow's private terminal." Thomas Harlow had been my doctoral advisor at MIT before joining NASA's upper echelons. He still answered my calls, even at 5 a.m. "Amina, do you know what time it is?" His face on the screen was creased with sleep, silver hair disheveled. "I need you to look at something, Thomas, now. And then I need to speak with whoever handles first contact protocols." He blinked, instantly alert. "That's a very specific request from someone who hasn't slept. I found something in NGC 5471, something that can't be natural." His expression shifted from concern to grave attention. "Send me the data. Encrypted. I'll call you back within the hour." Within 24 hours, I found myself aboard a government transport to NASA headquarters. Deep Observation and Threat Evaluation Network. Read the temporary badge clipped to my jacket. DOTAN, another alphabet agency born in secrecy. The transport landed at a private airfield outside Washington, D.C. A black SUV with tinted windows waited on the tarmac, its driver anonymous, behind dark sunglasses despite the pre-dawn darkness. We drove for nearly an hour, the scenery outside transitioning from urban sprawl to dense forest. Finally, we arrived at what appeared to be an ordinary government research facility, its true purpose hidden behind bland architecture and minimal signage. Security was intense, retinal scans, voice recognition, and an unsettling full-body imaging system that made me feel like I was being dissected. My escort, a stone-faced woman who introduced herself only as Agent Keller, led me through a labyrinth of corridors to a conference room deep within the complex. "Wait here," she instructed, leaving me alone. The room was Spartan, a long table surrounded by ergonomic chairs, wall screens currently dark, a subtle hum of air circulation. I noted the lack of windows, the discreet security cameras in each corner. This was a room designed for secrets. 10 minutes later, the door opened. Thomas entered first, looking more formal than I'd seen him in years. He was followed by a diverse group of serious-faced individuals, military officers, scientists and government officials, judging by their attire and bearing. "Dr. Voss, welcome." A tall man with salt and pepper hair extended his hand. "Commander Reese Holden, retired Artemis program." "The Lunar Explorer," I noted, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "And this is Eli Navarro, our AI ethics and communications specialist," Holden continued. Navarro nodded curtly, mid-30s, meticulously groomed, with eyes that calculated everything. "Your discovery has significant implications, Doctor. If confirmed, we're witnessing either a natural phenomenon, unlike anything in astrophysical records, or evidence of engineering on a cosmic scale," I finished. "Precisely," a thin smile. though we'll need substantial verification before entertaining such theories. The others introduced themselves: Dr. Lydia Okonkwo, Exobiology; General Frank Reynolds, Space Force; Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, Theoretical Physics, and several others whose names and titles blurred together. Each regarded me with a mixture of skepticism and barely concealed excitement. "Your data has been preliminarily reviewed," Thomas said, taking a seat opposite me. "While intriguing, there are several alternative explanations we need to rule out before proceeding with more exotic hypotheses." "I've already eliminated the standard alternatives," I countered, irritation seeping into my voice. "Stellar decay patterns, gravitational anomalies, instrument error." "Nevertheless," interrupted General Reynolds, "protocol demands thoroughness. You'll be provided with a team and resources to conduct comprehensive verification. Commander Holden will oversee the operation." I glanced at Holden, who offered an almost imperceptible shrug of solidarity. At least someone here might listen. The next 2 weeks were a blur of analysis, debate, and increasing unease. My original findings were verified repeatedly. The stars in NGC 5471 weren't just dying, they were being systematically consumed in a geometric pattern that defied natural explanation. Our team expanded, occupying an entire wing of the facility. Days blended into nights as we processed astronomical data, modelled theoretical scenarios, and argued interpretations. I barely slept, subsisting on cafeteria sandwiches and endless coffee. When exhaustion finally claimed me, I dozed on the cot installed in my makeshift office, only to jerk awake with fresh ideas or renewed anxiety. Commander Holden proved to be an unexpected ally. Unlike the others, he approached the data without preconceptions, asking insightful questions and defending my methodologies when others raised doubts. His background as an explorer gave him a unique perspective. He'd seen enough unusual phenomena to know that the universe rarely conformed to our expectations. "They're scared," he confided one night as we pored over new observational data. "Not of what we're seeing, but of what it implies. That we're not alone? That should be exciting, not terrifying." He smiled grimly. "Humans like to imagine we're the center of the universe. Evidence to the contrary is unsettling." Eli Navarro remained an enigma. Brilliant but reserved, he focused primarily on theoretical communication protocols and containment strategies, preparing for contact scenarios while others were still debating whether contact was possible. There was something calculated about his interest, a precision to his questions that suggested a separate agenda. By the end of the second week, even the most skeptical members of the team had begun to accept that we were observing something extraordinary. Dr. Tanaka's theoretical models couldn't explain the pattern without introducing external intelligent factors. Dr. Okonkwo had begun speculating about non-carbon-based life forms capable of surviving in stellar environments. General Reynolds spent increasing amounts of time in closed-door meetings with government officials who arrived with minimal introduction and departed just as mysteriously. On May 2nd, everything changed. "Dr. Voss, you need to see this." An analyst rushed into my temporary office, tablet in hand. "The JWST just sent this image from the affected sector." I took the tablet, expecting another grainy, enhanced photo of distant stellar bodies. What I saw turned my blood to ice. The image was impossibly clear, far beyond the telescope's known capabilities. It showed a massive structure enveloping a blue giant star. Not mechanical, not rigid, but fluid, almost organic. Vast tendrils of dark matter stretched from a central mass, pulling stellar material inward. The structure had geometry, purpose, design. "This isn't possible," I whispered. "The Webb doesn't have this resolution." "That's what everyone's saying," the analyst replied. "But the data came through authenticated channels. It's real, Doctor." I stared at the image, unable to reconcile its existence with known physics. The structure defied conventional engineering principles. It seemed to exist partially in dimensions beyond our perception, folding space around itself to create impossible geometries that somehow remained coherent. Colours shifted across its surface in patterns that suggested communication or processing, a vast neural network spanning stellar distances. Most disturbing was its obvious purpose. This wasn't observation or exploration, it was consumption. The star was being systematically dismantled, its energy and matter channeled into the structure through those fluid tendrils. I couldn't escape the impression of feeding, of a cosmic predator consuming its prey. "Get Commander Holden and Director Harlow immediately," I instructed the analyst, "and lock down this data. No one else sees it until they've been briefed." While waiting for them to arrive, I examined the image more closely, noting details that raised further questions. The structure's surface contained patterns reminiscent of biological systems, cellular structures, vascular networks, neural pathways, but at a scale that dwarfed galaxies. Equally disturbing were the structural similarities to ancient human architecture, proportions that echoed the golden ratio, spirals matching the Fibonacci sequence, fractal patterns found in countless human cultures. It suggested not just intelligence, but a connection, as if whoever or whatever had built this had influenced human development. Or perhaps underlying mathematical principles were universal, emerging independently across vastly different scales and contexts. Either possibility was unsettling. Holden arrived first, slightly out of breath. His expression darkened as he studied the image. "Where did this come from?" he demanded. "JWST direct feed," I replied. "Authenticated and verified." "That's not possible," he muttered, echoing my earlier sentiment. "The web can't produce this level of detail at that distance. It would be like reading a newspaper headline from the moon with a pair of binoculars. Yet here it is." He looked up sharply. "You think they wanted us to see this?" The question sent a chill through me. "I hadn't considered that. Maybe you should." His voice lowered. "If they can enhance our telescope's capabilities from across the galaxy, what else can they do?" Director Harlow arrived with General Reynolds and Eli Navarro in tow. Their reactions mirrored our own. Disbelief, followed by dawning comprehension of the implications. "This changes everything," Harlow said finally. "We're not just observing an anomaly. We're being shown something." General Reynolds' face hardened. "The question is why, and what happens next?" Commander Holden assembled the Dotan team immediately. The room hummed with nervous energy as the image displayed on the main screen. 30 individuals from various departments sat in stunned silence. Astronomers, physicists, military personnel, government analysts, and communication specialists. Some I recognized from previous briefings, others seemed to have appeared specifically for this moment of crisis. "What we're seeing," I explained, struggling to keep my voice steady, "resembles theoretical Dyson sphere technology, a hypothetical megastructure that could harness the entire energy output of a star. But this is beyond anything we've conceived. It's not just collecting energy, it's consuming the star entirely." "Like a stellar engine?" someone asked. "More advanced," I replied, "and vastly larger. If our calculations are correct, this represents technology capable of manipulating energy at the galactic scale, a Kardashev Type 3 civilization." Dr. Tanaka interrupted, his voice tense. "The energy requirements for such a civilization would be astronomical, literally. They would need to harvest entire galaxies to sustain themselves." "Which appears to be exactly what they're doing," I countered, advancing to the next slide. A time-lapse showing the progression of stellar consumption across NGC 5471. "This isn't random, it's systematic harvesting," Eli Navarro leaned forward. And the pattern of consumption, what does that tell us? They're methodical, efficient. I pulled up the star chart. They've consumed 7 stars in this sector alone, each selected for maximum energy yield. Could it be mining? Suggested Dr. Okonkwo. Perhaps they're extracting specific elements rather than just energy. I shook my head. The stars are being completely consumed, not just mined for heavy elements. All matter is being converted or absorbed. It looks almost like a military campaign, securing strategic positions. Before advancing, General Reynolds studied the pattern with narrowed eyes. Or agricultural harvesting, countered Dr. Okonkwo, following optimal patterns to maximize yield while allowing for regeneration. The implications sent murmurs through the room. These weren't just engineers, they were farmers, and stars were their crops. Commander Holden cleared his throat. The question no one's asking, are they aware of us? The room fell silent. I don't think they were, I said finally, but they might be now. Explain, demanded Reynolds. This image, I said, gesturing to the screen. It came through the JWST with impossible clarity. Either our telescope suddenly developed capabilities beyond its design specifications, or someone, enhanced the transmission. They wanted us to see this. Or they made a mistake, suggested one of the communications analysts. Perhaps we intercepted something not meant for us. That's the best case scenario, Navarro said softly, that we're eavesdropping rather than being directly observed. Director Harlow, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. We need to establish a communication protocol immediately. If they're aware of us, they may attempt contact. Or they may simply consume our sun without bothering to say hello, Reynolds countered grimly. We need defensive contingencies. This sparked heated debate. How does one defend against a civilization capable of consuming stars? What weapons could possibly deter such an advanced species? The military contingent advocated for immediate development of theoretical defenses, gravitational disruption devices, stellar stabilization systems, even nonsensical suggestions like dimensional barriers. Throughout it all, I found myself strangely detached. These discussions seemed absurdly human-centric, like ants debating how to repel a bulldozer. Whatever we were observing existed on a scale so far beyond our civilization that our very concept of defense was meaningless. I suggest we focus on understanding before planning resistance, I finally interrupted. We don't even know what we're dealing with yet. Are they biological entities? Post-biological intelligences? Something else entirely? What are their motivations? Their perceptions of time and space? Do they even perceive us at all? Holden nodded in agreement. Dr. Voss is right. Knowledge first, then action. Reynolds scowled but conceded the point. You have 1 week to gather more intelligence, then we move to defensive planning regardless. As the meeting adjourned, Holden pulled me aside. Good job in there. You kept things focused on the science. For all the good it will do, I replied. Did you see their faces? Half of them are still in denial, and the other half are planning for interstellar war against an enemy that might not even recognize us as intelligent life. He smiled grimly. Welcome to first contact, Doctor. It's never what we imagined. That night, in my Spartan quarters within the Doten facility, exhaustion finally claimed me. My sleep was not peaceful. I dreamed of stars being devoured by vast shadow entities that shifted between dimensions. In the dream, I floated in the void, witnessing the consumption process from impossible vantage points. The entities, if they could be called that, existed partially in dimensions beyond our perception. They folded space around themselves, creating geometries that hurt to observe. Their movements followed patterns that seemed both random and perfectly ordered, depending on which dimensional plane you observed from. Most disturbing was their awareness. Though they had no features I could recognize as sensory organs, They perceived everything around them with perfect clarity, including me. In the dream, one of the entities paused in its stellar consumption and turned its attention toward my observing consciousness. I felt a vast intelligence examining me, not with hostility or curiosity, but with the detached interest of a biologist noting an unusual microbe. I woke gasping, sheets drenched in sweat. The dream felt significant, not just a manifestation of stress, but almost transmitted, as if something had placed those images directly into my mind. The digital clock on my nightstand read 3:17 a.m. Sleep would not return, so I dressed and made my way to the operations center. To my surprise, I wasn't the only one working through the night. Dr. Tanaka hunched over complex equations at his station, while several analysts monitored real-time data feeds. "You couldn't sleep either?" Tanaka asked, without looking up. "Bad dreams," I replied, pouring myself coffee from the communal pot. He nodded. "Many of us are experiencing them, always the same, watching the stars being consumed." A chill ran through me. "The same dreams? That's statistically improbable," he finished, "unless there's an external influence." The implication hung between us, too disturbing to verbalize further. In the following days, more images arrived, each impossibly detailed. We watched in horror as another star collapsed into the maw of the cosmic structure. The consumption process took weeks in accelerated time-lapse. The star's outer layers stripped away first, then the core compressed and absorbed. Nothing remained afterward. No stellar remnant, no nebula of dispersed materials, simply an absence where something massive once existed. Then something unexpected happened. The structure changed direction. "It's moving towards the galactic arm adjacent to ours," I announced to the team, pointing to the trajectory analysis on the main display screen. The operations center had fallen silent as everyone absorbed the implications. "This isn't random harvesting anymore. It's targeted." "Could it be coincidence?" asked one of the junior analysts. "Perhaps they've simply exhausted the available resources in their current sector." Dr. Okonkwo shook her head. "The pattern doesn't support that hypothesis. There are dozens of viable stars remaining in their previous sector. This is deliberate redirection." Eli stepped closer to the display, his expression unreadable. "How long would it take to reach our galaxy at current speeds?" I ran the calculations again, hoping I'd made an error previously. I hadn't. "Approximately 900 years, I stated. "But there's no way to know if that's their top speed, or if they can accelerate." The relief in the room was palpable. Almost a millennium before potential contact. Time for humanity to prepare, to advance, perhaps even to develop our own interstellar capabilities. Commander Holden's face darkened, interrupting the moment of collective relief. "We need to expand monitoring to our local stellar neighborhood. If these things can move between galaxies, we need early detection systems." "Commander?" I questioned. "Think about it, Doctor," he replied, eyes still fixed on the projection. "If they can manipulate our telescope to show us their activities from across the universe, who's to say they're actually where we think they are, or when?" His words sent a ripple of unease through the room. He was right. We were applying human limitations to entities that clearly operated beyond our understanding of physics. Distance might be meaningless to them. Time as well. "Furthermore," Holden continued, "if they're aware of us, aware enough to transmit images to our technology, then they might have been watching us for some time. They might already be here." General Reynolds, who had been observing silently from the back of the room, stepped forward. "I want expanded monitoring protocols, implemented immediately. All observatories, all satellites, all deep space arrays focused on our local cluster. If anything anomalous appears, I want to know about it instantly." As the room erupted into renewed activity, I felt a strange sensation crawling along my spine. The feeling of being watched by something vast and patient. Whether instinct or paranoia, I couldn't say. As our research intensified, I noticed Eli's increasingly suspicious behavior. Late-night communications, restricted database searches, closed-door meetings with nameless officials. Something beyond scientific curiosity was driving him. One evening, I found him in the data center, accessing files outside his clearance level. He didn't notice me immediately, giving me a moment to observe. His expression was intense, focused in a way that suggested personal investment rather than professional interest. When he finally sensed my presence, he closed the files with practiced casualness. "Working late, Dr. Voss." "As are you," I replied, approaching his workstation. "Interesting reading." "Just reviewing the pattern analysis." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Your work is revolutionary. It will change how we understand our place in the cosmos." "That's not my work," I said, nodding toward his screen, where I'd glimpsed classified military files. "That's well outside your department." A flicker of something, annoyance, concern, crossed his face before his professional mask returned. "Interdisciplinary approach. General Reynolds requested I review potential security implications." It was plausible, but something felt off. I made a mental note to discuss my concerns with Commander Holden. The facility had transformed over the past weeks. What began as a small team had expanded into a massive operation. New departments emerged daily: xenolinguistics, theoretical weapons development, psychological impact assessment, public disclosure planning. Military presence increased, with armed guards stationed at every junction and restricted areas multiplying. Amidst this controlled chaos, I maintained focus on the data itself, spending hours alone with the images and telemetry. Something about the structures nagged at me, a familiarity I couldn't place. They reminded me of something I'd seen before, though I couldn't recall where or when. June 13th brought the next breakthrough. The JWST data feed contained more than images. Buried within was a signal, complex, structured, repeating. Not radio waves or light pulses, but patterns embedded within the astronomical data itself. I discovered it while analysing spectral variations in the stellar consumption process. At first, I thought it was an instrument error. Regular fluctuations in the data stream that didn't correspond to any known astronomical phenomenon. But when I isolated the pattern and enhanced it, structure emerged. Deliberate, sophisticated, undeniably artificial. "It's a message," I told Commander Holden privately, showing him my preliminary analysis in my office after hours. I deliberately avoided the main systems, instead working on an isolated terminal, disconnected from the facility network. "But I don't think it's meant for us." His weathered face registered confusion. "Explain." "The signal predates our observation. It's been transmitting for at least 300 years, based on stellar positioning. We just happened to intercept it." "Can you decode it?" "I'm trying. It's not a language or mathematics as we understand them. It's conceptual, like pure meaning compressed into patterns." Holden considered this. "Who do you think it's meant for?" "I don't know. Maybe other entities like them. Maybe different factions within their own civilization. Or perhaps it's not communication at all. Maybe it's more like a marker or a beacon. Like a lighthouse. Or a warning buoy," I suggested, "marking dangerous territory." His expression darkened. "Either way, we need to understand it. How long will you need?" "Days, at minimum. Maybe weeks. I'll need specialized resources." "You'll have them," he promised. "But keep this between us for now, until we know what we're dealing with." I nodded, understanding his caution. Too many agendas were already at play within Doten. For 3 days, I barely slept, running complex algorithms against the signal. I worked alone in a secure room, food and coffee delivered at irregular intervals. The patterns began to resolve themselves slowly, not into language exactly, but into conceptual frameworks. The message seemed to operate on multiple levels, simultaneously, conveying different information depending on how you interpreted the pattern. When the pattern finally emerged, I felt a cold dread spread through me. It wasn't a greeting. It wasn't an announcement of presence. It was a warning, not against a threat, but against interference. The stellar harvesting was part of a vast, incomprehensible process. The entities marked their territory, not to keep others out, but to prevent disruption of their work. And their work was essential, not just to them, but to the structure of the universe itself. At least, that's what they believed. The signal conveyed absolute certainty. These activities were necessary, inevitable, part of a cosmic cycle beyond our understanding. To interfere would bring consequences far beyond the loss of a few stars. I slumped back in my chair, overwhelmed by the implications. These entities weren't conquerors or explorers. They were caretakers of a sort, performing maintenance on the fabric of reality. And we were disrupting their work simply by observing it. The final symbol in the message was what broke the case open. A curved shape with radiating lines, simple but distinctive. On a hunch, I ran it through historical databases. The results left me speechless. The same symbol appeared in Mesopotamian carvings dating to 3200 BCE, in Aboriginal rock art in Australia, estimated at 10,000 years old, in Viking runestones, in Mayan codices. Across human history, across isolated cultures, the same symbol recurred. They had been here before, not just passing through. They had interacted with humanity throughout our development. Perhaps they had guided us. Perhaps they had merely observed. But they knew of us, had always known of us, had watched us develop from primitive tribes to a spacefaring civilization, and now we had noticed them back. I compiled my findings into a secure presentation and sent word to Commander Halden. This wasn't just a scientific discovery anymore. It was an existential revelation about humanity's place in the cosmos. We weren't alone, had never been alone, and our supposed observers had been observed themselves for millennia. When I presented my findings to the full Doton team, the room erupted into chaos. Theories, questions, fears, all voiced simultaneously. Military officials huddled with security analysts, whispering urgently. Xenolinguists demanded access to the full signal pattern. Exobiologists speculated about the entity's physiology and evolutionary path. Through the commotion, I noticed Eli slip out, phone pressed to his ear. I followed him. The corridor outside was deserted, emergency lighting casting long shadows along the walls. I kept my distance, trailing Eli as he navigated the labyrinthine facility with practiced ease. He moved with purpose, occasionally checking behind him but never noticing my presence in the shadows. Eventually he ducked into an unused conference room. I positioned myself just outside the door, which had failed to close completely. "Yes, the signal is authentic," I heard him whisper urgently. "No, they don't understand the full implications. Prometheus Initiative needs to accelerate the timeline. If they're returning, we need the defensive systems operational." A pause as he listened to whoever was on the other end of the call. "I don't care about authorization protocols. This supersedes governmental jurisdiction. The entire planet is at risk." Another pause. "No, don't involve the oversight committee. They'll only delay implementation. Direct to deployment phase." I stepped into view, pushing the door open. "Prometheus Initiative? Who are you really working for, Eli?" He whirled around, face flushing. "Dr. Voss, this isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're feeding classified information to outside interests." "No, I'm ensuring humanity has options." He straightened, dropping the pretense. "Nexus Technology Group has been preparing for extraterrestrial contact for decades. We have resources the government doesn't or won't deploy." A private corporation wants alien technology, I translated. How patriotic. This isn't about profit, he hissed. It's about survival. Do you think NASA will act decisively? By the time the bureaucracy processes the threat, it could be too late. His eyes burned with an intensity that bordered on fanaticism. I'd seen that look before, in colleagues who'd become so fixated on their theories that they lost perspective. What exactly is the Prometheus Initiative? I demanded. Insurance, he replied. A defensive grid designed to protect our solar system from exactly this kind of threat. Experimental technology, beyond anything publicly acknowledged. Based on what? We don't even understand what we're dealing with yet. We understand more than you think, Doctor. His voice dropped to a near whisper. The symbol you found? Nexus has been studying it for decades. It appears in private artifacts owned by some of the wealthiest families in the world. Families whose bloodlines trace back to ancient civilizations. The entities have been guiding certain human lineages for millennia. Preparing us. Preparing us for what? Before he could respond, my phone buzzed with an emergency alert. Commander Holden's voice came through, tight with tension. Amina, get back here now. Something's happening at Proxima Centauri. Eli's eyes widened. It's starting, he whispered, more to himself than to me. They're here. The closest star system to Earth was showing the same dimming pattern. They weren't 900 years away. They were already here. I sprinted back to the operations center, Eli close behind. The room was in controlled chaos. Analysts shouting readings, officers barking orders, screens displaying real-time data from every observatory trained on Proxima Centauri. Confirmed dimming pattern, reported Dr. Tanaka, his face ashen. Identical signature to NGC 5471. Stellar output reduced by 0.3% and accelerating. How is that possible? Demanded General Reynolds. Even at maximum theoretical speeds, they couldn't have reached us yet. Unless they were already on their way, suggested Commander Holden. Or unless there are more of them distributed throughout the universe. Or unless they can manipulate space-time, I added, the horrifying possibility emerging as I spoke. Create shortcuts between distant points. Director Harlow turned to me, desperation in his eyes. What do they want? Your analysis of the signal? Does it tell us anything useful? They're not interested in us specifically, I explained, choosing my words carefully. The signal suggests they're engaged in some kind of cosmic maintenance, harvesting stellar energy for a purpose they consider essential to universal stability. We're incidental, like insects in a field being harvested. They're targeting our sun next, Reynolds asked. I shook my head. I don't know. The pattern at Proxima Centauri suggests a systematic approach, but I can't predict which star they'll move to afterward. Eli stepped forward. We need to prepare for the worst-case scenario. If they do target Sol, we have weeks at most before effects become noticeable. Increased solar radiation initially, then gradual dimming. Is there any way to communicate with them? Dr. Okonkwo asked, to explain that we're intelligent life that depends on our star. I don't think they're unaware of us, I said slowly. The historical evidence suggests they've been observing humanity for thousands of years. They know we're here. They may not care. The next 48 hours were governmental chaos. Briefings with increasingly high-ranking officials, debates about public disclosure. Through it all, the stars near Proxima Centauri continued to dim, the pattern unmistakable. I found Commander Holden alone in the observation room at 3 a.m., staring at the live feed of Proxima Centauri. The dimming had accelerated, now approaching 2% reduction in stellar output. Magnified images showed distortions in the star's corona, as if something massive but invisible was interfering with its magnetic field. Can't sleep either? He asked without turning. How could I? Everything we know is about to change. He nodded slowly. In my 20 years exploring space, I prepared for many disasters. Solar flares, micrometeorite collisions, life support failures. Never this. What are they? I whispered, voicing the question that had consumed me. I don't think we have concepts for what they are, he replied. Maybe they are so advanced they've transcended physical form. Maybe they evolved in higher dimensions and simply intersect with our reality when feeding. All we know is they consume stars, and they've been aware of Earth for millennia. And now they're back? Yes, the question is, why now? I considered this. Perhaps they've always been here, and we're just now able to detect them. Or maybe they operate on vast timescales. Thousands of years might be a moment to them. Or maybe we triggered something, he suggested. Our technological development, our expansion into space, our observation of them. Like shining a flashlight into a dark corner and discovering what's been hiding there all along. Exactly. He turned to face me, his expression grave. The president is being briefed in the morning. After that, decisions will be made about public disclosure. They can't possibly keep this secret, I objected. Amateur astronomers will notice Proxima Centauri's changes. It's already causing ripples in the astronomical community. They'll try anyway, control the narrative, prevent panic. He wasn't wrong. Already I'd heard discussions about cover stories, unusual solar activity, experimental deep space observation techniques gone awry, even elaborate disinformation campaigns to discredit civilian observations. What do you think will happen? I asked. He sighed heavily. Best case? They consume a few stars in neighbouring systems and move on. Worst case? They reach our sun. And then? Then humanity has to face the reality that we are not the masters of our domain. That there are forces in the universe that could end us without even noticing our existence. The answer came 3 days later in another impossible image from the JWST. The structures around Proxima Centauri had changed configuration. They weren't just consuming, they were constructing. A vast celestial machine was taking shape, its purpose unknown but clearly intentional. The structure resembled an enormous antenna or transmitter, oriented precisely toward the center of our solar system. As we watched, it began to emit pulses of energy in frequencies that shouldn't have been detectable by our instruments, yet somehow were. They're sending a signal, Dr. Tanaka said, analyzing the emission pattern, directed specifically at us. At our sun, more likely, I corrected, or something in our solar system we haven't detected. General Reynolds had been pacing the operations center floor for hours, periodically barking orders into his secure comm unit. Now, he approached our workstation, face tight with controlled fury. I've just come from a Joint Chiefs briefing, he informed us. NATO and our Pacific allies are mobilizing space-based defensive assets for all the good that will do. What kind of assets? Commander Holden asked. Reynolds hesitated, then apparently decided we were cleared to know. Experimental directed energy platforms, theoretical anti-gravitational disruptors. Honestly, shots in the dark. Nothing designed to confront anything of this magnitude. They won't work, I said flatly. These entities manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. Our most advanced weapons would be meaningless to them. Maybe, Reynolds conceded, but humanity won't go down without a fight. It's not a fight, I insisted. That implies opponents of comparable scale. This is more like a human stepping on an anthill without noticing. Meanwhile, the political situation deteriorated. Information had leaked. Eli's doing, I suspected. Public panic rose as amateur astronomers confirmed unusual activity near Proxima Centauri. Religious leaders proclaimed the end times. The markets crashed. Fringe groups emerged overnight. Some advocating mass suicide to appease the star gods, others claiming the entities were benevolent guides coming to elevate humanity to a higher plane of existence. Conspiracy theories flourished, many disturbingly close to the truth. Governments worldwide instituted emergency measures, curfews, internet restrictions, rationing of essential supplies as panic buying emptied stores. And then Eli disappeared, along with critical research data. His access card was found abandoned in the facility parking garage. Security footage showed him entering his government-issued vehicle at 2:17 a.m., accompanied by two unidentified individuals in civilian clothes. The vehicle was later found abandoned at a private airfield 50 miles away. Nexus Technology, I told Commander Holden during an emergency briefing. He's been working for them all along. Nexus Technology has gone dark, Commander Holden informed me. Their facilities are abandoned. Whatever they were planning, they've either implemented it or aborted. Director Harlow slammed his fist on the conference table. I want him found, now. With everything that's happening, the last thing we need is corporate interests pursuing their own agenda. But finding Eli proved impossible. Nexus Technology had effectively ceased to exist overnight. Their headquarters empty, digital footprint erased, executives unreachable. Whatever the Prometheus initiative was, it had gone completely underground. We need to continue the work, I insisted, with or without them. The program's being shut down, Amina, Holden said quietly. The president is addressing the nation tonight. They're going with natural stellar phenomenon to prevent panic while they prepare contingencies. Contingencies against a Type 3 civilization. What are they going to do? Throw rocks at them? His silence was answer enough. I made my decision. I have copies of most of the critical data. My family owns a property in Colorado with an observatory. If you're willing... He didn't hesitate. Lead the way, Doctor. The mountain observatory became our base of operations. Remote, self-sufficient, with excellent viewing conditions. The property had belonged to my grandfather, an amateur astronomer who designed the facility to his exacting specifications. After his death, it passed to my father and then to me, rarely used but meticulously maintained. Located at 9,000 feet in the Colorado Rockies, the observatory offered both isolation and an unparalleled view of the night sky. A main building housed living quarters, a basic laboratory, and communications equipment. The observatory dome itself stood separately, connected by a short covered walkway. Solar panels and a backup generator provided reliable power, while a natural spring supplied fresh water. My grandfather had designed it to be self-sufficient for months if necessary. We arrived under cover of darkness, having taken elaborate precautions to ensure we weren't followed. Commander Holden's military background proved invaluable. He knew exactly how to evade surveillance and cover our tracks. We used only cash, switched vehicles 3 times, and followed obscure mountain roads for the final approach. The journey gave us time to process what we were undertaking. We were effectively going rogue, not quite deserting or defecting, but certainly operating outside official channels. The implications for our careers were severe, possibly criminal. Neither of us mentioned this aloud. Some things were more important than professional standing or even personal freedom. The potential extinction of humanity qualified. It's perfect, Holden said as we carried equipment into the main building. Isolated enough to work without interference, but connected enough to monitor global developments. My grandfather was nothing if not thorough, I replied, activating the main power systems. He built this place during the Cold War. Paranoia was a family trait. Seems less like paranoia now, he observed. We spent the first day setting up our equipment, specialized computers, enhanced telescopes, and the drives containing the DO-10 research data. I'd been methodical in what I'd copied, focusing on raw observational data rather than analysis, original signal patterns rather than interpretations. We would form our own conclusions free from institutional bias or political pressure. The work was physically demanding, but mentally clarifying. For the first time since the discovery, I felt focused, purposeful. Here, away from the chaos of Doten and the political machinations, we could approach the problem scientifically. That evening, we made our first observations of Proxima Centauri. The dimming had progressed significantly, now approaching 8% reduction. The transmitted signal had also intensified, with new patterns emerging that we hadn't observed before. They're accelerating their timeline, I noted, comparing our readings with the Doten data. Whatever they're building, they're working faster. Can you determine what it is? I shook my head. Not definitively, but based on its configuration and energy emissions, it appears to be some kind of transmitter or signal amplifier. Calling for reinforcements, he suggested grimly, or communicating with others already in our vicinity. I highlighted an energy pulse directed towards a seemingly empty region of space near Saturn. There's nothing visible there, but they're definitely sending targeted communications in that direction. Could they have cloaked ships, invisible structures? Possible. More likely they exist partially outside our observable dimensions. We're only seeing their impact on our space-time, not their actual presence. We worked tirelessly, tracking the entity's movements, trying to decipher their intentions. Days blended into nights as we maintained constant observation, sleeping in shifts to ensure we missed nothing. When not at the telescope, we analysed data, refined algorithms, and monitored global news feeds. The world was beginning to unravel. Despite official explanations of unusual but natural stellar phenomena, panic was spreading. Financial markets collapsed entirely. Civil unrest erupted in major cities. Religious fervour reached unprecedented levels, with mass gatherings at significant sites worldwide: Jerusalem, Mecca, the Vatican, Varanasi. They're not telling people the truth, Holden observed, watching footage of riots in London. Would it help if they did? I countered. What could the average person do with the knowledge that cosmic entities are harvesting stars, besides panic more effectively? He had no answer for that. On our 7th day at the observatory, we had our breakthrough. The combined data from Doten and our own observations finally yielded a coherent picture, horrifying in its implications but clarifying in its certainty. The truth emerged gradually, horrifically clear. They weren't invaders in the traditional sense. They weren't conquerors or colonizers. They were harvesters. To them, stars were resources, food, fuel, raw materials, for cosmic-scale projects beyond our comprehension. They had been harvesting across countless galaxies for billions of years, following patterns optimized for efficiency. Earth had been catalogued long ago, our sun marked for eventual consumption, and now the harvest had reached our corner of the Milky Way. It's not just energy they're after, I explained to Holden, displaying my analysis on the main screen. Stars contain something else they value, something fundamental to their existence or technology. The consumption pattern suggests they're extracting specific quantum properties from stellar cores. For what purpose? Based on the signal patterns, they're building something. Not just the transmitter at Proxima Centauri, something much larger. A network spanning multiple galaxies, connected through dimensional interfaces we can barely detect. To what end? I believe they're trying to stabilize something, perhaps the fabric of space-time itself, or some higher dimensional structure we can't perceive. The warning signal suggests their work is essential for preventing some greater catastrophe. So they're destroying stellar systems to save what? The universe? From their perspective, the sacrifice is justified. Individual stars are expendable compared to cosmic stability. And humanity, are we expendable too? I had no comforting answer. I think we simply don't register as significant in their calculations. We're microorganisms living on a food source they need to harvest. July 30th, 2037, the day the sun began to dim. It started subtly, a 0.02% reduction in output, unnoticeable to the naked eye but clear in our instruments. The process was accelerating. I stood on the observatory deck, telescope trained on our dying star, and felt a strange calm descend. The panic, the desperation of recent weeks faded into acceptance. What use was fear in the face of cosmic inevitability? They don't hate us, I told Commander Holden as we watched the sunset, slightly less vibrant than the day before. They don't even consider us. We're microbes on a fruit they're preparing to eat. That doesn't bring much comfort, he replied. No, I agreed, but there's a certain peace in it. We're witnessing something few civilizations ever see. The true indifference of the universe. He turned to me, his weathered face solemn in the fading light. Is there nothing we can do? No way to communicate with them? To explain our existence, our value? We've been trying, I reminded him. Every major observatory on Earth has been broadcasting signals toward the structures. Mathematical sequences, electromagnetic pulses, even digitized images of human civilization. If they've received the messages, they've shown no interest in responding. What about Prometheus? He asked. Whatever Eli and Nexus were planning. I shrugged. No sign of them or their initiative. If they had some secret weapon or communication protocol, they're keeping it to themselves. The dimming accelerated. 1% by August 3rd, 5% by August 7th, the world descended into chaos below. But on our mountain, we maintained our scientific vigil. Global communications began to break down as panic spread. Governments collapsed under the weight of civil unrest and resource shortages. Military forces abandoned their posts to protect their families. The veneer of civilization, always thinner than we pretended, peeled away rapidly in the face of extinction. Through our satellite link, we monitored the deteriorating situation. Major cities burned. Borders became meaningless as massive migrations sought safety that didn't exist. Religious extremism flourished, with cults emerging around various interpretations of the celestial threat. Some worshipping the entities as gods, others claiming they were demons presaging the apocalypse. We continued our work, documenting the consumption process with scientific detachment. The sun's corona showed distinct deformations, areas where something invisible was interfering with its magnetic field. Spectral analysis revealed unusual energy fluctuations, consistent with what we'd observed at Proxima Centauri, but accelerated. They're learning, I noted, comparing time sequences, becoming more efficient with each star they consume. On August 15th, an unexpected visitor arrived. Our perimeter sensors detected a vehicle approaching on the access road, a military transport driving with headlights off, despite the deepening gloom of the dimmed sun. Holden grabbed the rifle he kept by the door, a precaution against both desperate humans and local wildlife. Stay inside, he instructed, moving to a defensive position with practiced efficiency. I ignored him, following him onto the porch. If someone had tracked us here through all our precautions, I wanted to know who. The vehicle stopped 50 yards away. Its doors opened and 3 figures emerged, 2 with military bearing, flanking a slighter civilian form I recognized immediately. Eli, I breathed. He approached slowly, hands visible to show he carried no weapons. His escorts remained by the vehicle, alert but non-threatening. Dr. Voss, Commander Holden. His voice carried clearly in the still mountain air. May I approach? I come with information you need. Holden kept the rifle trained on him. You disappeared with classified data. You're working for private interests against national security. Give me one reason not to shoot you right now. Because Prometheus is active, Eli replied calmly, and it's working. Those words hung in the air, impossible but tantalizing. Holden's rifle didn't waver. but I could see the calculation in his eyes. "Let him approach," I said, "but just him." Eli nodded to his escorts, who remained by the vehicle, as he walked forward. Up close he looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes, skin pale, clothes rumpled from days of wear. "You look terrible," I observed. A thin smile. "End of the world will do that to you." "Prometheus," Holden prompted, lowering the rifle but keeping it ready. "Explain." Eli glanced toward the observatory. "May we go inside? What I have to show you requires your equipment." We led him into the main building, maintaining a cautious distance. His escorts remained outside, seemingly content to wait. "Who are they?" I asked, nodding toward the window. "Special Operations, former Delta, now working private security for Nexus. Good men." "Traitors, you mean?" Holden said sharply. Eli ignored the barb, setting his backpack on the table and removing a hardened laptop. Prometheus Initiative began 20 years ago after Nexus's founder had a close encounter with one of these entities. "What kind of encounter?" I demanded. "Direct communication, mental interface. The details aren't important right now. What matters is that we've been preparing for their return, developing technology based on their own principles." He opened the laptop, bringing up complex schematics. "We've deployed a network of quantum resonators throughout the solar system, each individually insignificant, but collectively creating a frequency barrier tuned specifically to the entity's dimensional signature." Holden looked skeptical. "You're saying you've built a fence to keep them out?" "Not exactly. More like a disruptive field that makes stellar manipulation less efficient. It won't stop them permanently, but it slows them down. Buys us time." "Time for what?" I asked. "To communicate properly," Eli replied, bringing up another screen showing energy waveforms. "We've been analyzing their signal patterns for decades. We believe we've identified the fundamental frequencies they use for consciousness transfer." "Consciousness transfer?" I repeated, incredulous. "They don't exist purely in physical form," he explained. "Their bodies, for lack of a better term, are distributed across multiple dimensions. What we're seeing is just their three-dimensional footprint as they manipulate our reality." Despite my skepticism, this aligned with my own theories. "And you think you can communicate with them directly? Mind to mind?" "We already have, tentatively. That's how we know the resonators are having an effect." He pulled up astronomical data showing the sun's dimming rate. "Notice the plateaus? Each represents a successful disruption event." I studied the data carefully. He was right. The consumption rate had periodic interruptions, brief stabilizations before continuing its downward trend. "If you're disrupting them, why are they still consuming our sun?" Holden asked. "Because we're insignificant to them," Eli admitted. "We're creating the equivalent of a mild irritation, but it's enough to get their attention, which is the first step toward meaningful exchange." "Exchange of what?" I demanded. "What could we possibly offer entities that consume stars?" "Information," he replied simply. "Knowledge from our dimensional perspective. We exist in a state they find difficult to achieve or maintain. Our perceptions, our science, it's novel to them." "You're suggesting we trade scientific knowledge for our survival?" "I'm suggesting we make ourselves more valuable alive than consumed." It was absurd, desperate, and yet the only glimmer of hope anyone had offered. I glanced at Holden, seeing my own cautious interest reflected in his expression. "What do you need from us?" I asked finally. "Your signal analysis," Eli said. "Your direct observations, and," he hesitated, "your biological presence." "Excuse me?" "The quantum resonator network creates the disruption, but direct communication requires human consciousness as a transmission medium. Your work with the original signal gives you unique neural patterns, pathways already attuned to their frequency." "You want to use me as an antenna," I said flatly. "I want you to help save humanity," he countered, "and perhaps learn more about the cosmos than any human has ever known. It's dangerous, Holden objected. We don't know what direct contact with these entities might do to a human mind. We've taken precautions, Eli assured him. The interface is buffered, regulated, and it's our only chance. I considered the alternatives, watching helplessly as our sun dimmed to nothing, as humanity descended into final chaos, as all human achievement and potential vanished into cosmic indifference. When do we start? I asked. Eli's shoulders relaxed slightly. Now the window of opportunity is narrowing. The entities are adapting to our disruptions. That night we connected Eli's equipment to our observatory systems. The interface device looked deceptively simple, a sleek headset with neural sensors that would monitor and amplify specific brain activity patterns. The actual complexity lay in the quantum entanglement network that would theoretically connect my consciousness to the distant entities. The principle is similar to how they communicate across vast distances, Eli explained as he calibrated the equipment. They use quantum entanglement at a cosmic scale, instantaneous information transfer regardless of physical separation. Spooky action at a distance, I murmured, recalling Einstein's famous description of quantum entanglement. Exactly, but they've mastered it at levels we're just beginning to comprehend. This technology, he patted the equipment, is reverse engineered from principles observed in their signal patterns. Holden remained skeptical, standing guard, with his rifle still within reach. And you're certain this will work? Nothing is certain, Eli admitted, but it's worked in limited trials, and we're running out of alternatives. The setup took hours, synchronizing our observatory's direct solar observations with the quantum network, calibrating the neural interface to my specific brainwave patterns, establishing secure connections to the few remaining Nexus facilities still operational around the world. By midnight we were ready. The sun had been below the horizon for hours, but our instruments showed its continued dimming, now approaching 8% reduction, with global temperatures dropping accordingly. I sat in a specially prepared chair, neural sensors attached to specific points on my scalp. Eli's equipment hummed softly around me, screens displaying incomprehensible data streams. Holden stood nearby, concern evident in his stance. If anything seems wrong, anything at all, we terminate immediately, he insisted. Eli nodded. The safety protocols are robust. We'll start with minimal connection and increase gradually. What should I expect? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Initial disorientation. Sensory patterns unlike anything you've experienced. Then, if the connection stabilizes, direct communication, not in language as we understand it, but in pure conceptual transfer. And if my mind can't handle it? His hesitation was slight but noticeable. The buffers will break the connection before permanent damage occurs. Comforting, I muttered. Ready? Eli asked, hand poised over the activation controls. I took a deep breath. Do it? He initiated the sequence. At first, nothing happened. Just a slight tingling sensation where the sensors contacted my skin. Then, a subtle shift in perception, as if the room was slightly out of focus. The transition from normal consciousness to interface was gradual, then suddenly absolute. One moment I was sitting in the observatory, aware of Holden and Eli watching me anxiously. The next, I was elsewhere. Not oblivion, as I had feared, but expansion. My consciousness stretched across vast distances, perception no longer limited by physical senses. I experienced multiple dimensions simultaneously, seeing the folded geometry of space-time, feeling the subtle currents of dark energy flowing between galaxies, hearing the resonant frequencies of stellar cores as they vibrated in cosmic harmony. And I was not alone. They existed all around me, vast intelligences that dwelled in this expanded state permanently. Not bodies as we understand them, but patterns of energy and information distributed across multiple dimensional planes. They were ancient beyond comprehension, their thoughts operating on scales that made human civilization seem like the briefest flicker. Communication wasn't verbal or even conceptual in the human sense. Instead, entire systems of understanding transferred instantaneously, complex and multifaceted. I struggled to translate the experience into human thought patterns, my consciousness nearly overwhelmed by the influx of alien perspective. They were aware of us, had always been aware of us, as we were aware of microorganisms in a drop of water. Not hostile, not benevolent, simply observant. Earth was logged in their vast catalogue of life-bearing worlds, one of millions they had identified throughout the galaxies they traversed. The stellar harvesting was indeed necessary, not for their survival as individuals, but for the maintenance of cosmic equilibrium. The universe was dying, its expansion accelerating toward eventual heat death. Their work, consuming specific stars in precise patterns, created quantum bridges between distant regions of space-time, redistributing energy to maintain stability. They were caretakers of a sort, though on a scale we could barely comprehend. Their work had been ongoing for billions of years, an endless cycle of consumption and redistribution. Individual stars, even life-bearing solar systems, were insignificant compared to the preservation of universal coherence. I understood now why the ancient civilizations on Earth had recorded their symbol. These entities had been performing their maintenance work since before humanity evolved, occasionally becoming briefly perceptible when their dimensional manipulation created sensory anomalies perceptible to primitive humans. But something had changed recently. Our observation of them, truly seeing their work for what it was, had created an unexpected resonance. Human consciousness, particularly consciousness that understood aspects of their purpose, registered as a novel phenomenon in their awareness. A novelty to entities as ancient as these was precious. The Prometheus resonators had indeed disrupted their work, though not in the way Eli had theorized. The quantum frequencies had created a synchronization between human neural patterns and their own information processing systems. Not communication exactly, but recognition. I felt their attention shift, focusing more precisely on my extended consciousness. A question formed, not in words, but in pure information transfer. What are you? I responded as best I could, sharing the essence of humanity, our brief existence, our struggles, our achievements, our potential. The complexity of living as finite, mortal beings bound to three-dimensional perception. Our capacity for love, creation, discovery, even in the face of inevitable death. Their response was neither emotional nor logical by human standards. It was a recalculation, an adjustment of priorities based on new information. We were reclassified in their vast taxonomy, from incidental life forms to emergent conscious patterns worthy of preservation. Our sun would still be harvested. Cosmic stability demanded it. But not now. Not for millennia. Time enough for humanity to develop the technology needed to survive without our original star. Perhaps even to join them in their work of universal maintenance. This reprieve came with knowledge, vast, complex understanding of dimensional engineering, energy manipulation, consciousness transfer. Too much for a single human mind to contain, but enough to guide our development if properly decoded. I felt myself beginning to destabilize. Human consciousness unable to maintain extended dimensional perception indefinitely. As my awareness contracted, I received one final transfer. A set of specific stellar coordinates and quantum frequencies. Their equivalent of a forward contact protocol, should humanity wish to communicate again once we had developed further. The return to normal consciousness was brutal, like being compressed from infinite expansion into a tiny, constrained form. I gasped, body convulsing as neural pathways reconnected with physical sensation. Amina, can you hear me? Halden's voice, distant, then gradually clarifying. His face swam into view, etched with concern. Eli stood behind him, monitoring equipment with frantic intensity. I'm here, I managed, voice barely a whisper. I'm back. What happened? Halden demanded. You were convulsing, then completely still. Brain activity off the charts. Contact, I said, full contact. Eli abandoned his equipment, approaching with naked hope on his face. Did they respond? Did they understand? I laughed weakly. They understood. They've always understood. We're the ones who couldn't comprehend them. And, Halden pressed, what happened? They're stopping. Temporarily. I struggled to sit up, head pounding with the after effects of the interface. They're giving us time. Time for what? Eli asked. To evolve, to develop, to become something more than we are now. I pointed to his equipment. The data buffer, did it record the information transfer? He checked quickly. Yes, massive data package, petabytes. We'll need significant computing power to analyze it. It's a gift, I explained. Knowledge to help us survive without the sun. Not immediately. We have years, perhaps decades before it's needed. But eventually, Halden looked skeptical. They're still going to take our sun? Eventually, yes, it's necessary for something far larger than us, the continued stability of the universe itself, but not for thousands of years. Time enough for humanity to prepare, to adapt. And you believe them? Eli asked. You trust these entities? Trust isn't the right concept, I said, struggling to translate what I'd experienced into words. They operate beyond our moral frameworks, but they've reassessed our value. We're interesting to them, novel. And novelty, to beings as ancient as they are, is precious. Over the next hours, I explained as much as I could of what I'd experienced, the multi-dimensional existence of the entities, their cosmic maintenance work, the quantum bridges they created between distant regions of space-time. Much of it defied translation into human language, requiring complex mathematical models and conceptual frameworks we were only beginning to develop. By dawn, the first evidence of the entity's withdrawal appeared. Our instruments showed the solar dimming had not only stopped, but slightly reversed, stabilizing at approximately 7.8% reduction. The tendrils around the sun were gradually retracting, the consumption process halting. News began filtering in from other observatories worldwide, confirming our readings. The global panic took longer to subside, confusion and skepticism replacing fear as the immediate threat receded. No one understood why the entities had changed course, only that they had, except for us. What do we do now? Halden asked, as we watched the sunrise, brighter than it had been in weeks, though still diminished from its former glory. We prepare, I said simply. We analyze the data they provided. We rebuild what was destroyed in the panic, and we begin developing the technologies we'll need when they eventually return. And what about you? He asked, after experiencing whatever that was. How do you just go back to normal life? I considered this, watching the strengthening sunlight illuminate the mountain landscape. I don't think I can. None of us can, really. We've glimpsed something beyond human comprehension. We've been forever changed by it. Eli joined us, tablet in hand. The data analysis has begun. Preliminary results suggest breakthrough concepts in quantum mechanics, dimensional engineering, even consciousness transfer. It could advance human technology by centuries, if properly implemented. That's their intention, I said. They're giving us the tools to survive without them, to become something more than we are now. More like them? Halden asked, concern evident in his voice. No, I replied. Something uniquely human, but capable of existing beyond our current limitations. They value diversity, different forms of consciousness approaching the same fundamental questions from different perspectives. The implications were staggering. Not just technological advancement, but philosophical transformation. Humanity would never be the same, even if most people never fully understood what had happened or why. The knowledge that we were not alone, that we existed within a cosmic ecosystem far larger and more complex than we had imagined, would gradually permeate our collective consciousness. In the months that followed, I divided my time between helping decode the entity's data package and explaining what I could of their nature to carefully selected scientific and governmental representatives. Prometheus initiative evolved from a secretive corporate project into an international research collective, with Eli serving as liaison between former Nexus scientists and the broader scientific community. The sun stabilized completely by October, its output returning to approximately 93% of normal, enough to prevent global catastrophe while serving as a constant reminder of our vulnerability and the entity's power. Global recovery began slowly, with societies rebuilding based on new priorities and perspectives. Commander Halden eventually returned to official service, heading a new division focused on developing space habitats and interstellar travel capabilities, technologies we would need when the entities eventually returned to complete their work. As for me, I found myself changed in ways both subtle and profound. My perception never fully returned to its pre-contact state. I experienced occasional dimensional shifts, brief moments where reality seemed to expand beyond its normal boundaries, where I could sense echoes of the entity's presence throughout the cosmos. They were still watching, still aware of us, not with the focused attention of human observation, but with the ambient awareness of caretakers monitoring countless systems simultaneously. We had been reclassified in their vast taxonomy, no longer insignificant microbes, but emergent patterns worthy of preservation. 1 year after contact, I returned to the mountain observatory alone. The facility had been significantly expanded, now serving as a key research station for the global initiative, studying the entity's data package. But I had requested privacy for this anniversary, a chance to reflect on what had happened and what was yet to come. I stood on the observatory deck at sunset, watching as the slightly dimmed sun slipped below the horizon. In the darkening sky, stars began to appear, distant suns, many undoubtedly surrounded by their own life-bearing worlds, all part of the vast cosmic ecosystem the entities maintained. And somewhere among those stars, they continued their work, harvesting, redistributing, maintaining the delicate balance that allowed existence to continue. Not gods, not demons, but caretakers operating on scales beyond human comprehension. I closed my eyes, feeling the faint resonance of their presence across the dimensional barriers. The contact had left me changed, sensitized to frequencies most humans couldn't perceive. Sometimes, in moments of perfect stillness, I could still sense them, their vast intelligence, their ancient purpose, their fundamental indifference tinged now with the faintest awareness of our significance. We had been granted a reprieve, not out of compassion, but out of cosmic curiosity. Humanity had become an experiment worth observing, developing consciousness in a universe of finite resources and inevitable entropy. Our struggles, our triumphs, our very existence had value in ways we were only beginning to understand. As darkness fell completely, I opened my eyes to the star-filled sky. Among those distant points of light, our future waited. Not salvation, not destruction, but transformation. Whatever humanity would become in the millennia ahead would be shaped by this encounter, by the knowledge that we existed within a cosmos both more hostile and more wondrous than we had ever imagined. I smiled into the darkness, feeling neither fear nor certainty, but something far more precious, curiosity. The same curiosity that had drawn me to astronomy as a child, that had led me to discover the dimming stars, that had driven me to reach across dimensional boundaries to touch alien consciousness. The entities had given us time. What we did with that time was entirely up to us. Above me, the stars continued their ancient vigil, unchanged yet forever altered in human perception. No longer just distant suns, but waypoints in the vast network of cosmic maintenance, each playing its role in the continued existence of everything, including us. This is Dr. Amina Voss, First Contact Specialist, signing on for humanity's next great adventure